Him alive later tonight.
Get off of his neck!
Still on him, bro.
Yes, look at that,
Back on the street.
Are you serious?
It started a long time ago.
Both of these cases with Derek Chauvin happened in 2017, 3 years before the murder of George Floyd.
We have this rolling video that's being seen over and over and over again.
The Department of Justice has concluded that there is reasonable cause to believe that the Minneapolis Police Department and the city of Minneapolis engaged in a pattern or practice of conduct.
The morale is so low right now that it's really hard for them to see how any of this is going to make a difference.
Is it possible to be supportive of police and still expect more accountability?
Absolutely.
Our pursuit of justice is not a means of us saying we hate the police. It's saying we want to be treated fairly.
Welcome to Pattern and Practice, a special report from 5 Eyewitness News. I'm investigative reporter Eric Rasmussen. Tonight we take you inside the federal investigation of Minneapolis police by the Department of Justice. The DOJ found a history of excessive force, discrimination, and free speech violations. You may have seen some of the headlines, but how did we really get here? Over the next hour, we'll show you how 3 years of original reporting by 5 Investigates is now reaffirmed by the findings of federal investigators. Issues of accountability, transparency, and the promises of reform, we'll examine it all with a critical lens. The defense of police officers whose jobs just got even harder, and even the skepticism that anything will really change. What you won't see again tonight is the on-camera murder of George Floyd. If you wanted to see that video by now, you probably have. There's no doubt it was a pivotal moment in our history. We found there's so much more, including the other men and women who laid the foundation for the DOJ's report with their own traumatic stories you may not have seen. Tonight you'll meet some of them. And that's where we begin. 5 people who all sued MPD, got settlements or jury awards, and say they're still fighting for change.
My name is Angela Smith.
My name is Al Flowers.
My name is Soren Stevenson.
Okay. My name is Diogene Felder Johnson.
I sued Minneapolis Police Department
to make sure we helped other families.
My family sued MPD to get justice for the death of my father. I was 7 when my dad was killed.
I sued MPD to see that this doesn't happen to other people.
Soren Stevenson is suing MPD after losing his left eye in a direct hit from a rubber bullet.
Got hit with the 40-millimeter round.
I'm Evan Gelhay, and I sued MPD to get some closure.
My daughter had to watch me get beat in my house.
My brother, David Smith, his killing was on video. He experienced a mental health crisis, and when the police came, they should have helped him, but they killed him with a knee to their back, keeping them from being able to breathe. As we couldn't bring our brother back, but we didn't want anybody else to suffer like we did.
I don't want this to happen again. Raise your hand if you've ever said those words. Yeah? That's everybody.
I've been fighting about this for a long time, and know it was going on deaf ears. So when it came to George Floyd, it was easy, but it wasn't a shock to me. It was a shock that somebody had finally caught it on videotape.
Let me ask you about that video of George Floyd. The first time you saw it, what was your reaction?
The first time I saw it, I was in complete disbelief. I can't explain how I literally felt like I saw my brother.
And your brother, David Smith, we'll say his name.
David Smith.
In addition to the settlement, the city promised that officers would undergo training on positional asphyxia.
Yes.
Fancy way of saying what happened to your brother, what happened to George Floyd?
Yes. Yes. They promised. And naively, we believed them.
I just felt really disgusted. When my dad was killed, he was shot 7 times, and at that time there was no camera phones, so I don't know, I just was glad that it was captured, but like very disgusted and just upset that that happened.
I was out on the street protesting within 2 days of his murder. I knew that in order for change to happen, more white people needed to show up.
Let's talk about that new report from the DOJ. MPD's accountability system is fundamentally flawed. What do you think when you hear those words?
The DOJ doesn't mean, it don't mean anything to me. I'm still trying to figure out how we're going to work with law enforcement in the African-American community.
Some may say this means nothing. I say it means something because somebody that these people respect and value has said the same thing that my family has been crying about since 2010.
The police union said this report doesn't fairly consider the fact that the department is short-staffed. It doesn't consider the psychological, emotional toll on the officers who are out there.
I definitely strongly disagree with that. In the very beginning of that document, there's many disclaimers just stating and shedding light on the fact that the challenges and risks that officers have to take when they go out. But what about the challenges and risk of people being black and Native human beings in America that can't even walk the street?
What about the bad apple defense? You all know what I'm talking about?
One bad apple spoils the bunch is the whole phrase. But in my case in particular, the officer shot me. And then there were plenty of other officers there, and they didn't say anything. It's not just one officer. There is a culture and, like the DOJ said, a pattern and practice of brutality and in covering up for when they know that someone else did something wrong.
It's not just that this one police officer who shot me, the one who shot Soren, the one who shot your father, the one who, you know, Chauvin. It's not just one officer. It's the institution.
I'm not saying that all police officers are bad at all. I know police officers. I have family members that are police officers, and I love them. It's just that the base of serving, let's make it about serving. But how do we get away from this historical lens of the black codes and how policing started in the beginning, and then now to say it's not about race?
There are people even watching this who are going to go, enough already. Enough already. You feel like you've heard that, or you've at least sensed that?
I have, and I would say it's easy to say when you get to spend Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays. You get to wake up next to your loved one. We will never get that. Oh, I will never get that. My brother, my sister, my family, we will never get that. So you can say that, and that is another level of disrespect and grief that I have to go through because you're tired or you're uncomfortable by my grief and my pain.
Do you think we're about to see meaningful change in this city? Yes or no?
If I have my way, we will.
Yes, I really don't know, but I pray.
No.
Al?
Yes, gotta believe.
Optimistically, yes. Even just this report, for me, it brings some hope. And I think in order to have change, you have to have some hope, because if you're hopeless, nothing will change.
As you just heard, some of the settlements with MPD include promises to make changes. Investigative reporter Kirsten Swanson has been tracking those promises and holding the leaders who make them accountable.
I promise you today that our department will be transparent and will provide an ongoing accounting of our successes as well as our challenges.
Standing side by side with the United States Attorney General in June, the Chief of Police and the Mayor of Minneapolis promised change is coming.
We are not going to stop until every single person in every single neighborhood and zip code feels safe interacting with the police.
A promise we've heard before.
We do not have trust in these systems or in these individuals because they have failed us time and time and time and time again. That story needs to be told.
To the skeptics who say, this isn't going to change anything, what do you say?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and tell them that things are going to change and hope that they believe it. We're going to create change, and they're going to see it directly.
Mayor Jacob Fry and Police Chief Brian O'Hara spoke with us in May about a settlement agreement with the State Department of Human Rights.
This is a legally binding agreement.
It forces MPD to create specific rules around when an officer can use force. It bans certain pretextual stops, searches, and arrests, requires additional training for officers, and increases the supervisor's role in accountability and oversight. One change already in effect, a ban on no-knock warrants that came last year after police shot and killed Amir Locke. Locke was not the man officers were looking for, though an MPD press release initially called him a suspect.
I think there were certainly some missteps that the city has to own.
Dr. Cedric Alexander wasn't in his role as Commissioner of Community Safety at the time. He watched what happened from afar.
A life was lost. We have this rolling video that's being seen over and over and over again. And people question, and they're questioning in this environment that is still reeling from the death of George Floyd involving its police department.
How do you earn that trust back in the department when the public has seen these examples where information is misleading or false?
Absolutely, and people will feel that way. And I promise you this, and I promise the community this. We're going to be forthright. We're going to be honest.
Those are promises that Cedric Alexander won't be able to deliver on himself. The city's first ever Commissioner of Community Safety is no longer in that job. This summer, Alexander announced he was leaving just 1 year into his 4-year term. The city is now looking to replace him, Eric, and that person is going to play a critical role in navigating requirements from both the state and federal government.
And you know, hope, promises, orders for change go back decades. One of the first times a jury called out systemic problems at MPD involved Craig Michie. This is what the former St. Thomas student looked like right after he was arrested in 1991. Michie said officers repeatedly kicked him after he was handcuffed during a bar fight in Minneapolis. He won his excessive force lawsuit against Lieutenant Mike Soro in 1994. And the jury went a step further, agreeing that the city encouraged the officer's behavior by allowing a, quote, culture of abuse to exist at MPD.
Hopefully this will cause some changes, and if one person doesn't have to go through what I went through, it's all worth it.
Yet in their final report released this year, federal investigators still found MPD officers frequently use gratuitous force. That's force used on individuals who have already been restrained, just like Craig Michie. The DOJ calls it a completely unnecessary act of violence. History repeating itself. The story behind this newspaper photo from 1971. Now, the arrest of a 12-year-old boy laid the foundation for the state to investigate Minneapolis police 50 years later. But first,
there was a lie after another lie after another lie.
Questions of credibility. Before the feds came to town, 5 investigates uncovered cases where police were not held accountable. Here, one former officer's response on camera when accused of lying in his reports.
The National Home Furnishing Sale has come to Home Furniture. Get up to 15% off sale prices with instant factory rebates. Plus, get free shipping and free financing on purchases of $4.99 or more. The National Home Furnishing Sale at Home Furniture.
Hi, I'm Greg Trzynski of the Original Mattress Factory. Did you know when you buy a mattress from a retail store, it's being sold for the second time? The manufacturer marks it up, sells it to the retailer, who marks it up again and sells it to you. Because OMF sells factory direct, the mattress you buy is being sold for the first and only time, providing great value. Don't buy your mattress twice. Visit the Original Mattress Factory today.
We had such a great experience with Empire, we would recommend it to anyone.
Real customers share their stories about Empire today.
As a matter of fact, we already have. Customer service and the personal touch is really where it's at. The quality, too, is important to us, and the quality of the flooring was great. I mean, we've had people come in our home and say, wow, this is really beautiful. Where'd you have it done? Empire.
800-588-2300 Empire. Today.
Get this low mileage lease on this 2024 Cadillac XT5 all-wheel drive for around $599 per month. Visit your local Cadillac dealer today.
It's Home Seasonal Concepts Porch and Patio Season Ending Sale. Get up to 50% off regular prices on porch and patio sets, fire tables, and more. Like this Baja porch set for just $11.97. The season-ending porch and patio sale. Now at Home Seasonal Concepts.
We need our officers to be truthful in everything they do.
What happens when those who swore an oath are no longer trusted by the people they promised to protect?
I'm enraged, and nobody has stopped him. Like, when does it stop? What does it take?
When their credibility is repeatedly challenged.
Well, what are you saying, officer, that you wrote a report that wasn't true, or what?
That's not necessarily the case.
Did you believe the officer's story?
No, I did not.
Before the federal government made that finding, reporter Ryan Raish was reviewing internal records in federal court cases, and Ryan, it revealed officers untruthful about their use of force, but rarely ever disciplined.
Eric, we found a pattern of officers falsifying police reports, omitting key details, or failing to report their use of force altogether. Not one was fired.
It's like the story just made it up from the beginning to the end, and it was a lie after another lie after another lie.
Walt Franklin will never believe what police said happened to his son in the basement of this South Minneapolis home. The only 5 people who witnessed the deadly shooting of Terrence Franklin in 2013 were the 5 Minneapolis police officers trying to arrest him after he broke into that house. They were all cleared of any wrongdoing, saying that Franklin was the one being combative, grabbed one of their weapons, and opened fire first. After reviewing this video shot by a neighbor that day, a federal judge also questioned what actually happened leading up to the officer's use of deadly force.
You can't say, yeah, this suspect in the basement never spoke a word when you have a citizen video across the street and you can hear the guy's voice multiple times. You know, if they would lie about that, what else would they lie about, you see?
Attorney Mike Patton sued the city on behalf of Franklin's family. He says one of the reasons the city had no choice but to settle for nearly $800,000 in 2020 is because the officer who pulled the trigger, Lucas Peterson, had a rocky relationship with the truth.
The fact that that shooter had such a sordid history really helped our theory, obviously.
In 2006, the city paid out $100,000 after a federal judge found that Peterson wrote a report that was, at best, a completely inaccurate representation. Peterson had claimed Nancy Johnson obstructed justice when she jumped on his partner's back during this traffic stop. The thing is, this surveillance video shows that never happened. In fact, Johnson is seen here walking away, back to the car.
What are you saying, officer, that you wrote a report that wasn't true, or what?
That's not necessarily the case.
Peterson's union did not respond to our request for an interview, but here's what he said about it during a deposition back in 2015.
Tell me your version, though.
My perception at the time of the incident led me to believe that I observed this Nancy Johnson grab my partner from behind, and then when the video surfaced, it showed that to not be the case.
That's not something that you make a mistake about. You don't think that somebody got jumped if they didn't get jumped.
Rachel Moran is a law professor at the University of St. Thomas who has been critical of internal affairs at MPD.
I don't understand how that's anything other than an outright lie.
There's instances and there's different situations that have occurred
where it was deemed that the employee was not intentionally trying to lie.
In fact, that's exactly what happened with Lucas Peterson. Internal Affairs found he, quote, did not intentionally misrepresent the facts, but rather inaccurately relayed the facts based on his perception of what had occurred. His discipline? A written reprimand and a cup of coffee with the then police chief, according to police and court records obtained by 5 Investigates.
Were you suspended?
No.
You know. That guy should have been fired years ago.
So to see that he still has a job and he's still doing that, that's hurtful. And that it's costing this city so much money, and nobody has stopped him.
Kelly Burns' family sued MPD about 20 years ago after her father died in police custody. According to the lawsuit, Lucas Peterson covered Christopher Burns' face with a pillow, choked him, and stepped on his head. Again, Peterson was cleared of wrongdoing. But the Burns family received a $300,000 settlement, an early fraction of the $1.2 million the city has paid out to settle cases involving Peterson's conduct.
I want to trust the police, but now I don't think I ever can. I've never been the same since that day. And it's happened over 20 years ago.
Lucas Peterson not only remained on the force, but was later promoted to sergeant and went on to become Derek Chauvin's supervisor. And we now know Peterson was there the night of this incident, years before the murder of George Floyd. Body camera video released earlier this year shows Chauvin beat 14-year-old John Pope with his flashlight, choked him, and then knelt on the back of his neck. At one point, Sergeant Lucas Peterson is seen on camera walking into the room, and according to a civil rights lawsuit, did not intervene.
Wouldn't you expect a sergeant to walk in and say, Chauvin, what are you doing? Get off him. That's not that surprising if you know Lucas Peterson's background.
The city of Minneapolis approved a settlement this year with Pope for $7.5 million. Lucas Peterson and Derek Chauvin were never disciplined for that incident.
When it comes to holding officers accountable, the Justice Department found inexplicable delays with misconduct overlooked or excused, mischaracterized, and ignored.
The patterns and practices we observed made what happened to George Floyd possible.
One of the key flashpoints in all of this goes back to how a public information officer with MPD first described what happened to George Floyd. Listen.
We do believe that this is a medical incident.
And during the murder trial of former officer Derek Chauvin, we learned that's how he originally reported what happened in a call to his supervisor.
We just had to hold the guy down. He was going crazy. Wouldn't go in, I'm not sure the moment. Wouldn't go in the back of the squad.
He'd suffered a medical emergency and an ambulance was called.
Is that the extent of what you can remember the defendant telling you about this incident?
I think that was basically it.
Truthfulness, it's key to officers' ability to serve their community and testify in court. Here again is Ryan Raish, who pressed prosecutors for answers about how they handle Minneapolis police officers with issues of credibility.
This dash cam video from a Minneapolis squad car shows a Minneapolis police officer tracking down a drunk driver.
Probably going to have a car taken off on a shared nurse.
His microphone starts recording just seconds before impact. That thud would send Celeste Dawkins to the hospital in November 2013, and Officer Corey Fitch to federal court after Dawkins sued 2 years later. Fitch claimed it was an accident, saying he tried to brake, but his car slid on the light frost.
Minneapolis Police too.
But the city had to pay out more than $100,000 to settle that lawsuit after a federal judge found this was no accident. That judge said dash camera video showed Fitch never hit the brakes. It is undisputed that he turned his squad car in Dawkins' direction immediately before striking her, the judge wrote. I want to ask about an MPD officer, Corey Fitch. Is he on your Brady list?
I don't know.
Dan Mabley used to oversee what's called the Brady Committee at the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. Brady refers to a Supreme Court ruling from the 1960s that requires prosecutors to disclose potentially damning details about officers involved in a criminal investigation. The reason I ask about Corey Fitch is because he was never disciplined, and he hit a woman with his squad car. He says it was an accident. A judge said it appeared to be intentional. And again, he was never disciplined. So would that conduct be flagged?
It wouldn't be in our flag system. No, it wouldn't be flagged.
Under your system, under your policy,
we only get police discipline records.
I want to ask about one other officer, Mark Hanneman, who's been in the news a little bit. Is he flagged in your system?
I don't know.
Mark Hanneman is the officer who shot and killed Amir Locke while executing a search warrant in 2022. As 5 Investigates first reported, Hanneman's credibility was questioned in court less than a year earlier. A judge found he conducted an illegal search during a drug raid, which he denied even after body camera video was played in court. The Hennepin County Attorney's Office dropped the case. It raises questions about credibility, right?
It does. It does. So, obviously, I knew nothing about this. I don't know what system it would be that we could put in place to flag that.
5 Investigates found the system also failed to flag former officer Luke Eckert. Prosecutors accused him of engaging in a cover-up after police knocked this man unconscious.
That rises to the level of serious misconduct.
But our reporting revealed Eckert wasn't disciplined for nearly 3 years and was therefore allowed to testify in another case. In a statement at the time of our reporting, the county attorney defended the decision, saying Eckert played a, quote, limited role, and the conviction was not dependent on his testimony. What's your reaction to that?
It's egregious. It's beyond cheating. It's hiding the ball and getting a conviction at any cost.
Bill Ward is the chief public defender for the state of Minnesota.
So ultimately, you're allowing the police department to screen or, frankly, to hide information based upon whether or not it's discipline or not.
How many MPD officers are on your Brady list?
We don't have a Brady list, but I don't know.
You don't know how many officers are on the list?
There's, like I say, there's no list. We only get a flag if a particular officer in a particular case comes up in the computer. So we don't keep a list.
Can you give me a ballpark of how many officers are flagged in your system? How many MPD officers?
I don't know. I have no idea.
After our reporting, Mary Moriarty, the new Hennepin County attorney elected last November, promised to overhaul the system of how her office tracks officer credibility, Eric.
And Ryan, where does all this stand now?
Well, Moriarty told me that process is still ongoing, but as we saw in a recent court case, there are still concerns about how prosecutors handle testimony from officers with issues of credibility.
Ryan Raish, thank you. As we've shown you tonight, this is not the beginning or the end of the story for Minneapolis police. Next, we take you around the country where other cities are already under federal oversight, how long it could really take to see reform, and why not everyone is buying the federal government's conclusions about MPD.
When it comes to reviewing force, you don't have to be right. You have to be reasonable.
The pushback from police and one law enforcement expert who says the feds failed to prove a pattern and practice.
A local man and a Purple Heart recipient being honored during a national tribute.
When they first told me about this, I asked them, why me?
His incredible actions that has the nation grateful for his sacrifices.
What news they're sharing, it's not easy. And they're doing that in such a tactful way. And I really respect that because I know how hard it is sharing bad news with friends. And I think they're doing that through the screen.
Wake up with Minnesota's favorite morning news.
Minnesota is full of stories.
I think it brings people together.
Rich history.
It's not meant to be forgotten.
And interesting places.
It's a huge part of our legacy and our history.
Join me every Monday night as I bring you something that's so Minnesota.
Come and get your love at White Bear Subaru. You'll love the selection and the deal. Lease a new 2023 Forester for a low $259 a month for 36 months. Luther White Bear Subaru, the #1 volume Subaru dealer in the Midwest.
A truck is a tool, but a Ram is life. It's the let's load up the ATV's life. The my kids play way too many sports life. The let's find a secret spot to fish life. Nice. Discover how Ram powers all the lives you live during Ram Power Days.
During Ram Power Days, get 2.9% financing for 72 months, or well-qualified current FCA lessees can lease the 2023 Ram 1500 Bighorn for $422 a month.
Watch me. Watch me shine with every snap. Born to move fans, to cheer and clap. 2 different legs, that's how I play. One built from science to help me on the deck. Between these lines, I'm all heart and muscle. Don't stare too long, you'll miss the hustle. Watch me. Pioneers in prosthetic technology at Shriners Children's. The most amazing care anywhere.
Come and get your love at Luther White Bear Subaru for value, selection, and 0.9% financing. See the #1 volume Subaru dealer in the Midwest with the largest selection in Minnesota.
Come and get your love, come and get your love now.
I would tell the people of Minneapolis to have patience.
You're in for a tough haul.
There is no quick fix.
You're in for constant change.
They can expect a lot of policy change.
The DOJ moving in, as intimidating as that may sound, is not to punish, it's to help.
Take months before Minneapolis finalizes a consent decree with the federal government. Investigative reporter Kirsten Swanson tells us once reached, those agreements remained in place in other cities for years.
Right now, there are a dozen police departments in the United States under federal consent decrees, according to the Department of Justice. From Newark to New Orleans, Portland to Puerto Rico, 5 investigates found on average the court-ordered reforms are enforced for 9.5 years before the oversight is lifted.
Yeah, these types of consent decrees can last a long time.
Dr. Antonio Oftali is the federal monitor for the Seattle Police Department. His job is to make sure the department sustains the reforms year after year. Why do these last so long?
Part of the reason why they take so long is that there are requirements in the consent decree that go deep into the organization of the police department. Sometimes you'll find that police departments will make some good progress initially, and then they'll kind of take their foot off the gas a little bit, and then they'll go backwards.
And Minneapolis has already taken a step backward, according to the federal investigation. After the murder of George Floyd, a ban on neck restraints met considerable resistance from officers who felt it was a knee-jerk reaction. The DOJ specifically cited this video obtained by 5 investigates earlier this year.
The officer starts punching the man while on top of him. Finally, it all ends with a chokehold.
This happened in August of 2020, 2 months after the ban.
We found that MPD officers often use neck restraints without warning on people suspected of only minor offenses and on people who posed no threat.
Resistance to reforms happens in other cities as well.
There is no quick fix.
Take Albuquerque, New Mexico, for example. In 2021, 5 investigates traveled to the land of enchantment to learn more about how the police department navigated its consent decree, now in its 9th year.
We truly didn't know what the impact, the final impact was and how it would change things.
At that time, did you have any idea what that was, what was coming?
Absolutely not. We had not a clue the depth and the magnitude of what this meant to our police department.
And carrying out the mandated reforms isn't easy. In Albuquerque, city records show the federal monitor billed the city more than $8.1 million from 2015 to 2021. Reporter Jay Coles recently spoke with city leaders in Minneapolis about what to expect.
It's going to cost millions of dollars.
In addition to the monitor, the chair of the city's Public Safety Committee, Latricia Vita, says the city has to pay for the infrastructure to support the reforms.
That's going to be on, staffing. There's going to be a huge team of staff that we have to hire to overlook this.
This will outlive every single one of the politicians that are seated in Minneapolis right now.
Sean Willoughby, president of the Officers Union in Albuquerque, argues the reforms haven't changed policing there and won't change what's happening here.
You're still going to have officer-involved shootings. You're still going to have officer-involved shootings of individuals that are of color. That's not going to change.
Dr. Oftally says even though it can take a decade, the federal oversight does eventually end. But to get to that point, he says, it requires a commitment from both city leaders as well as officers on the street.
And Kirsten, you mentioned that monitor from Seattle, and soon an independent monitor here in Minneapolis will be responsible for managing the relationship between the city, its police force, and this community. 5 Investigates recently learned who is applying for that job. Through a public data request, we found that they range from large law firms to consultants to a local community group. When the Justice Department released its report in June, Attorney General Merrick Garland took a moment to speak directly to Minneapolis police officers. Here's what he said.
Your profession is essential. The work you do on a daily basis is extremely difficult and often very dangerous. Your responsibilities are enormous and could not be more important. This agreement is an important step forward toward providing you with the support and resources you need to do your job effectively and lawfully.
But there is already pushback and skepticism here in Minneapolis. There are also questions about the DOJ's investigation itself. Under the microscope of the federal government,
I have lived through this before.
One of the reasons Minneapolis hired Chief Brian O'Hara was his experience in Newark, New Jersey, when that department signed a consent decree in 2016. O'Hara recently told us he faced resistance within the ranks.
I have not seen here the level of resistance that I saw in Newark at all. I would say most of the police officers here see this as no big deal. We're doing all this stuff anyway.
I think they do see it as a big deal.
In a rare on-camera interview, Police Union President Cheryl Schmidt spoke with Kirsten Swanson in May.
There are some real concerns from the cops that are out there doing this work every day. The morale is so low right now that it's really hard for them to see how any of this is going to make a difference, make things better.
Schmidt has not agreed to another interview since the DOJ announced its findings, but in a statement said the report condemns an entire agency and its employees based on anecdotes that were presented with a lack of context. 5 Investigates found Schmidt isn't the only one pushing back on the feds.
When it comes to reviewing force, you don't have to be right. You have to be reasonable.
Dr. Matthew Steen is a former officer, a researcher, and a law enforcement consultant.
Well, I think from a research perspective, I would challenge some of their models and methodology, but I also think they got some things right.
Steen specifically questions the number of people interviewed by the DOJ and who investigators spoke to.
When they say they talked to and did ride-alongs and reviewed, what are they using as the standard for reviewing? They said they used 12 statisticians and experts. Well, who are these people? What are the qualifications?
Do you think the public has a right to know who the people are?
I think certainly Minneapolis has the right to know who they are. Another problem that I saw with the research is that they specifically addressed people that were, we'll say, anti-law enforcement or anti-Minneapolis police. So they're going to have a skewed perspective of things. And if you're going out based on the assumption that Minneapolis may or may not be a bad police department, are you looking at confirmation bias and finding what you're looking for anyway?
Do you have any indication that U.S. attorney members or the DOJ came into it with that bias?
No, I don't.
The Minneapolis city attorney also challenged legal conclusions that MPD violated the First Amendment rights of protesters and journalists when lawyers fought to keep the DOJ report from being introduced as evidence in a civil lawsuit. You and I both know there are going to be some people watching this who hear all of this as a way of explaining away police misconduct. What's the response?
Oh, there absolutely is police misconduct. But I think it's relatively small. There are ways to demonstrate that there is a pattern in practice or complete evidence to demonstrate that there statistically are anomalies.
Do you think this report met that bar?
I think it'd be hard-pressed to say it did.
As Minneapolis tries to fill out those ranks, there are still concerns about who they're willing to hire. Kirsten Swanson spoke to a former officer with a controversial past and tells us why even he was surprised to get a job offer.
When Charles Storley left Minneapolis Police in the mid-2000s, his departure was quiet.
I just went in and resigned and kept it to myself.
But he acknowledges his time with the department was anything but.
Why was it important for you to disclose everything from your background, the critical incidents, the high-profile incidents, when you were going through this process?
Again, in the age of Google, who can hide who they are?
Earlier this year, Storley applied to return to Minneapolis Police as a civilian case investigator.
I said, before we get into the process, I just want you to know who I am.
Storley wrote in an email to an MPD background investigator, if you Google Charles Storley, Minneapolis Police, you will get a number of hits. He expected them to find the headlines. 2 officer-involved shootings, multiple internal affairs investigations, and a civil lawsuit that at the time ended in the largest monetary settlement in Minneapolis history.
Officer Charles Storley opens fire.
In 2003, Storley shot fellow MPD officer Dewey Noe with a submachine gun. Noe was working undercover at the time.
I was unarmed when I was shot.
In 2007, the city paid out nearly $4.5 million for Storley's conduct in the shooting.
Is it fair to say at the time those were pretty high-profile incidents for the department?
Yes.
That's why Storley says he disclosed his past several times.
I'm stating to the officer, I said, if you could advise me at this early stage if that can be overcome or if that prevents us from moving forward. I'm not trying to sabotage my application. I want to make sure that that these items are addressed before we begin.
A day after sending those emails, he got this email explaining his application went up the chain of command to Deputy Chief of Professional Standards, Troy Schoenberger.
I thought for sure after that they wouldn't hire me.
Instead, his application moved on to a more extensive background check.
As more and more information was gathered about me, I thought that's the last stage I was going to be at. But it was exactly the opposite.
In March, the city offered him a temporary position as a non-sworn case investigator.
What did you think when you got the offer letter?
Very, very surprised.
Storley says he ultimately turned it down after a conversation with his ex-wife.
She goes, someone's going to find out who you are.
And Charles, there's a good chance that no one would ever know you were offered a job, this job, with the city of Minneapolis. Why bring this forward now?
The reason that I came to you and brought this up was of what had happened to Officer Timberlake.
In April, the Minnesota Reformer reported MPD hired a former Fairfax County, Virginia officer who was charged with assault after this encounter with an unarmed black man in 2020. A jury acquitted Tyler Timberlake, and this email shows he disclosed that information before Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara approved his hiring.
I would not have signed off on that hire if I had witnessed the behavior in that video at that time.
You can make a discussion if he should have been hired in the first place. That's perfectly valid. My point is that he was hired. He went through the hiring process.
It's very obvious to me that there is a problem here with this process if someone can go through layers of review and something like that not being flagged.
O'Hara told reporters all hires go through a full investigation that's reviewed up the chain of command. The same chain of command that signed off on Charles Storley.
We're not talking about one layer here. We're talking about 3 or 4 different levels of steps where it could have been stopped or it could have been diverted.
Do you think the way the process played out impacts the trust between MPD and the community?
I do. Does it impact the trust, the trustworthiness from the community? Absolutely, 100%. Will this story coming out add to that? 100%.
After we interviewed Charles Storley, we asked for an interview with Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara. He wouldn't agree to talk with us on camera. The department did say they would provide us a statement, but we're still waiting.
All right. Thanks, Kirsten. A turning point in Minnesota and the 50-year-old photo behind it.
2 adult cops to drag a child down the street.
How a family's fight led them to the Minnesota Supreme Court and set the stage for ordering reforms now.
Deal seekers, did you know? You can save a good deal more when you buy 2-piece living room sets at Dock 86. This sofa and love seat set with nail-head trim is just $8.49, or get this reclining set for $13.49. To buy more deals like this, take it from me, Allie. Just go to Dock 86.
Save 11% on Menard's unbeatable selection of Atlas roofing products. Castlebrook, Briarwood, and Pinnacle shingles feature a limited lifetime warranty, up to 130-mile-per-hour wind warranty, and a super wide design for fast installation. Choose from 20 styles in stock, ready to take home today. Atlas shingles are made to protect and designed to impress. Save 11% on all Atlas shingles right now in Menards.
Save big money at Menards.
For some of our patients, the goal is hoisting the trophy, but you just want to hoist your grandkids. We'll treat that knee so you can be there to lift them up. It's why you're treated and how you're treated by TRIA.
Save an extra $50, $100, or up to $500 back on each appliance during Warner Stellian Stack Savings. Score savings you can't find anywhere else. Up to $3,900 on top of instant savings only at family-owned Warner Stellian.
When the hailstorm came through, there was damage up on the roof. Sella pretty much took it from the beginning, working directly with the insurance company.
Sella took care of all the details, all the communication with the insurance.
The process was extremely easy. Sella handled everything.
Sella was able to point out areas of damage that the adjuster did not pick up on.
I would definitely recommend Sella.
And their work was fabulous.
They were outstanding.
Mattress buyers, Allie here to let you know now's a great time to test and buy a Casper mattress at Dock 86. Casper keeps you cool and comfy all night. Dock 86 always has the best price, plus get free shipping. For Casper, just go to Dock 86. A good deal more for a good deal less, a lot less.
I think we're in that situation where history might be rhyming or kind of repeating itself.
You would think that this was Alabama. You wouldn't think that this was Minnesota.
And all of the ugly that was going on is still going on. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed.
Years ago, an arrest on the streets of Minneapolis became a pivotal moment in the fight for civil rights in Minnesota. Investigative reporter Kirsten Swanson shows us how one graphic image of police violence first opened the door for the state to investigate MPD.
There he is. There he is.
Open a photo album and you're transported to the past.
It's a cool one of Dad.
Each picture, a snapshot of a family history.
Look at Randy with no teeth. I know, so he must be in first grade.
But for sisters Peggy and Jennifer,
he looks so serious in this picture. Yeah, he does, doesn't he? Yeah.
The photo that changed the Samples family isn't in one of their albums. It's in a newspaper. In April 1971, a Star Tribune photographer captured this image of two Minneapolis police officers dragging a 12-year-old black boy by his ankles down Hennepin Avenue.
You can see in the photo, he wasn't a big kid.
That little boy is Peggy's little brother, Randy Samples.
I was furious.
The newspaper reported that a fight in an arcade had spilled out onto the street. Peggy says Randy, who went downtown to buy a poster, walked over right as Minneapolis police used canines to break it up.
Even though there was a relatively big crowd of people, predominantly white, the dogs went right for Randy.
After being knocked to the ground, the officers dragged him nearly 30 feet to their squad car.
I remember being concerned about how he was dragged and hoping his hands were okay.
Jennifer is the youngest of the Samples children.
At 7 years old, not knowing much about how to feel, but feeling very angry and hurt.
I know that Randy came home, he was sad and frightened, very frightened.
When Randy's parents picked him up from the police station, he told them the officers used racial epithets, including the N-word, to describe him and the other African Americans in the crowd.
How did your parents respond?
They were very angry also.
Robert and Mary Jane Samples tried to file a complaint with the city.
There was not any accountability.
Decades before LeJune Lang became a district court judge, she worked in the newly formed Department of Civil Rights in the city of Minneapolis.
I was assigned the police accountability, looking into complaints against the Minneapolis Police Department.
She says in the late 1960s, the city had tremendous power to investigate complaints made against MPD officers.
The police officers used excessive and abusive force.
If we decided there was probable cause, we could have a hearing, a fact-finding hearing, and force the police officer through subpoena to come and testify at the proceeding.
But she says that power quietly disappeared after a Minneapolis police detective named Charles Stenvig won the 1969 mayoral race.
Make this complaint to the Internal Affairs Division.
And my position was abolished.
Finding no path forward with the city, the Samples family took their complaint and that photo to the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. 3 years after Randy's arrest, the state found the officer's actions and comments were motivated by bias because of his race. But the city fought it all the way to the Minnesota Supreme Court.
I remember it taking a long time.
In 1976, the High Court made a landmark ruling, deciding for the first time in Minnesota that a police officer's use of the N-word is a form of race-based discrimination.
How law enforcement actually treats black individuals, we were really just sort of at the beginning of what was discriminatory, what was inappropriate.
The ruling also affirmed the state had the power to investigate public officials and institutions like police departments for discriminatory conduct.
What was the significance of that at the time?
It really established that the Department of Human Rights could take on significant issues for marginalized communities.
And it allowed the state nearly 50 years later to investigate Minneapolis police again.
I think we're in that situation where history might be rhyming or kind of repeating itself.
First tonight at 6, a report released today finds probable cause that the Minneapolis Police Department engaged in a practice of race discrimination.
The report found historic racial disparities in policing in the city. Investigators say officers routinely use racist, misogynistic, and otherwise disrespectful language, including the N-word.
I think that we've taken a giant step nowhere.
The same word officers used to describe 12-year-old Randy Samples.
I guess a lot of folks didn't get the memo.
For the Samples sisters, this photo is a snapshot of the past, but also a warning of the problems that would resurface 50 years later.
How long y'all gotta hold him down?
This, with George Floyd, wasn't the beginning. It started a long time ago.
What do you think would have happened had a photographer not snapped this photo of Randy?
Nothing. Nothing would have happened.
If, Randy more than likely would have been convicted.
Right.
Without that photo, without that imagery, it doesn't go forward. Without the imagery, without the cell phone of Darnella Frazier, do we have justice in the George Floyd case?
He was dragged down this way.
On a street that looks nothing like it did 50 years ago.
They called him all kinds of names when they put him in the car.
Peggy and Jennifer are still transported in time.
That brings back the whole trauma of the situation.
Their footsteps tracking the path of those two officers.
I didn't know, who do you be angry at? Could I be angry at the cops? Aren't they supposed to protect us? Why are they doing this to my brother?
It just makes you, first of all, be very grateful that Randy's still with us. When I say Randy went in to buy a poster, a little boy, and he came out an old man, I think all of us aged a bit that day. And I think I became much more aware of what goes on in Minneapolis.
Thanks for watching Pattern and Practice. I'm Eric Rasmussen. Good night. Let's talk about moving forward, where we go from here. Al, I know you've run for city council before. Your group's name is in the hat for the Monitor. Soren, you're running for city council right now. What role does the council, does the monitor, does the government play in moving forward from here?
It plays the single biggest role.
Why?
They're the ones who get to decide whether they're going to have rules about is it okay to kneel on someone's neck. And then they're the ones who decide, okay, someone kneeled on someone's neck, what are we going to do about it? This document, the consent decree, is getting the Minneapolis Police Department up to the bare minimum of constitutionality. Well, we don't want to be at the bare minimum of constitutionality.
Stuff before, so I would say to our community that we have to continue to figure out how to work with law enforcement from our community perspective, like everybody else. The politicians gonna come and go, but they do things that they don't get us to move forward. I've been fighting about this for a long time, and know it was going on deaf ears. Even being a part of the mediation team with the federal government in the early 2000s. So we were fighting it way back then to say stop it, but nobody could hear us.
We were terrified of the police, scared. My brothers, my mom, my sister, all of us are scared of people who we used to embrace and think called them to protect. And so it took me a long time to unpack that anger, that fear, that distrust, to try to say we can't live in a world where we're so angry and so distraught and so fearful that, you know, that nothing gets done. Now I have something to point at when my family members who don't see eye to eye with me on this talk to me about policing. I can say, here's your document. Here's your proof from the federal government that this is going on. Physically, I will never be the same. Emotionally, mentally, I will never be the same. I like who I am now. I think that I am a better person because of some of the growth that I was forced to go through.
I'm glad that they're shedding light on these incidents, but it doesn't change anything. My dad's still dead. I don't know, I just want to make sure that there's changes that come from this.
Come and get your love at White Bear Subaru. You'll love the selection and the deals.